Hi, it's me, Galen. Galen's got Parkinson's. I want to talk today specifically about Tolkien and Tolkien's place in wargaming. When I started wargaming, I knew about The Hobbit. It was a sort of book that teachers read to us. And I'd never heard of Lord of the Rings. And I wasn't a fantasy gamer. I was a wargamer. And wargaming meant historical in the early 70s. And when I joined my first club, that's what was happening. People were playing historical wargames. Now, that was because there weren't any figures for any fantasy. There were some sci-fi figures, but they mainly came from America, and it was quite a pain to order anything from other countries back then. Obviously, I'm going to say obvious things, no internet. You had to find the right magazine, you had to order, trying to change your currency into whatever. In those days, it would certainly have been dollars, because the companies who were making alternative figures were in the US. And we were insular. We didn't hear about them. We knew about Hinchcliffe because one of the lads at War Games Club worked on a Saturday at a place that sold stamps and coins. And downstairs, they'd started to sell War Games figures. It was called the Stamp Corner. And so we would go in on a Saturday and buy some figures. And when I had my Saturday job, it was right opposite the Stamp Corner. So I'd pop in on my breaks and look what I wanted. And then when I got paid at the end of my day, I'd rush across and go and buy figures. But they were Napoleonic 25mm Hinchcliffe. Everything was 25mm. Now, there were other scales. There were 15mm. There were sci-fi. Traveller existed. There were fantasy games set in their own worlds, and I've covered that in the previous video. I don't want to do that one about Tolkien. But the first people to ever make Tolkien figures, Lord of the Rings, Hobbit, under license to the Tolkien estate, so they were approved, they were official, there was no copyright issue, were miniature figurines. Now, again, getting into fantasy gaming for me, and I can only talk as a personal experience, and your experiences might be different, and I'd love to hear them. Please let me know how were you a historical gamer who got into fantasy? Have you never been into historical games? You see, maybe that's where my generation have an advantage, because we didn't have a choice. It was historical games or no game. And we played with soldiers who tended to be historical. Airfix made Wagon Train, and they made Robin Hood and the Sheriff of Nottingham, but even they were pseudo-historical. You know what I mean. So we went to the War Games Club, as usual, for Friday night, and we walked in expecting to play our Napoleonic game, as we always did. But two of the older boys, university-aged lads, had got a lot of those big Britain's oak trees. You will have seen them if you look back through my videos. I've got some. And green cloth, and they had elves, and they had goblins. And I said, naively, "Oh, Hobbit." And one of them quite coldly said, "It's Lord of the Rings, idiot. Never heard of Lord of the Rings." So, realising there was another set of books to The Hobbit, which I loved, I raced off and got Lord of the Rings. I had to get it in 3 bits. You can either buy one big one, or you could buy 3, each book separate. I couldn't afford all 3. So I had to get one and read it, and then go and get the next one. I covered them in sticky back plastic, try and protect them. So that was my introduction. So I was a historical gamer, and because I was a historical gamer, I found not just fantasy, Tolkien, Lord of the Rings. So they were the first Tolkien war games producers. Very soon after, other people jumped on the bandwagon. And I don't want that to sound disrespectful, because I love those games. I loved Sword and Sorcery. I love Dungeons and Dragons. I'm not criticising them, but they are not Lord of the Rings. They're not. So I thought today, originally I was going to do all the figures, and I was going to do all the good guys and all the bad guys in one mammoth episode. But I thought that would be a bit much, and we can't luxuriate and enjoy each side. So I'm not doing all the figures, and I'm not doing any of the forces of Mordor and Sauron. I'm going to do those in another video. This is just going to be the good guys. And not all of the good guys either. Caliver Books. If you go online and find Caliver Books, they are reproducing and selling miniature figurines. And if you look for the picture on the left-hand side, you'll see that picture. And it will say, when you look down, classic, fantasy and science fiction. And when you go there, you'll find all of these chaps for sale at incredibly reasonable prices, newly cast, all bright and shiny for you to get the pleasure of painting. Because I was thinking that's another thing, really, and it's probably an idea for another video, because it's more about manufacturing than about Tolkien. These figures are so easy to paint, so that when we painted them, we felt like we'd achieved something. And it prompted us to carry on and painting and getting a good result. What I've done, I've taken photographs of the figures I'm going to discuss, and I'm going to stop each part of the video and just pop up a photograph for you to have a look at. I'm going to put it on sort of twice, one after the other, so it runs a bit longer, so you can enjoy it. I'm sure you can screen save it, freeze it, whatever you download it, whatever you want to do, share it. So help yourself, please feel free. And the figures are painted as we painted them in the 70s. Not trying to win a Golden Demon Award here. So I'm going to start at the bottom, really, with probably the lowest class of troops that I have in this segment. And what I'm going to do, just for me, for continuity, and I'm open about it, I'm going to turn the video off. I'm going to remove him, and I'm going to replace him with the new chaps. And then when I look at all the different shots I've taken, I'll know which comes in what order. So that's what's going to happen next. Miniature figurines did a lot of generic, random, ordinary people for their armies. There were a lot of Haradrim, and we had many types of things. But some we adapted, or we weren't happy with what they made. At some point I might look at the ones that weren't very successful, to be honest with you. Because some are not like we imagined they might be today. But again, I shall leave that for another day. So these fellas are sort of general villagers. They might be from, I don't know, Dunland. They might be just fellows, farmers of Gondor. They're not soldiers. They are just a sort of militia. And again, nice simple figures. They've got spears. But I will say, these spears are moulded on. They're not sticky on sharp things. And you can see the spear tip on the fellow in cream is a bit bendy. Well, when I straighten that, it won't fall off. It's been like that for 50 odd years. They don't bend. Well, they do bend, but they don't snap. They're very resilient. But he's got boots on, that we painted black. They've got trousers on, they haven't really got belts. They haven't really got buttons. They've got very, very simple cloaks. And they've got the simplest of faces, which is what I was saying about the ease of getting a nice result. And there is something to be said about that, isn't there? Nowadays, I sometimes wonder if you start the hobby now and you look at the complexities of the figures, when you get the shiny silver out your blister pack, and you must look at it and think, oh, that's a bit beyond me. But these weren't beyond us. We were painting our Airfix kits and tanks and things, so we could get away with this. It was fine, and we had a good result, and nobody could really outshine anybody else. It was quite egalitarian in that respect. So yeah, they're down the pecking order, these lads. There's quite a lot of these types of troops in my army, because they do the bulk of the work. I'm getting the least amount of money for it and the most amount of casualties and death. Hey, nothing ever changes. So here we have a sort of different regiment from, well, it could be from Gondor, it could be from anywhere. But it's human men of a garrison. Not necessarily Minas Tirith, but they are human warriors, and they look a tiny bit more fierce. Spearmen, trained soldiers, guards, that sort of job. I suspect if the ones we're going to see rather in blue with the fancy trees on their shields are higher up. I think they're probably more elite than these lads. I think these guys are guarding corn stores and patrolling the streets. That's just my feeling. Your feeling might be different. And so taking a step up from the peasant soldier, the militiaman, the villager, are the trained soldiers, and these are men from Gondor. We've decided to paint them very pale blue and white, and they've got a very, very crude example of the white tree on their shields. We have others, we have archers, and we even have 100 Years' War crossbowmen to pad them out, and the sorts of things that an army would have. They're very simple again. There's nothing spectacularly difficult about these fellas. They're not flashy. The point was having them. And I've got sort of a regiment with spears and a regiment with bows and a regiment with swords. And they're part of the army of Gondor. So there they are. I'll put some photos of those up for you as well. So moving along I've tried to sort of go up in order of importance. And this is an Ithilien, and one of Faramir's men. Now, I don't recall, and I read Lord of the Rings quite often, that many of them had spears. But what he has got that's nice, he's got a mask over his face, he's got a hood, he disguises himself. So, oops, sorry about that, Parkinson's wobbles. So easy to paint. I mean, if you look there at the detail on the sword, there's nothing there really. It's just a bit of brown down the side and a bit of black on the top for a sword. Nothing complicated about painting him. Dead straightforward. Choose your Humbrol paint that you use for painting your Airfix aeroplanes, and you're off. So we've got an Ithilien here with a bow. Now, I've got quite a few of these, and they form an important part of my army. Whether I'm playing a Middle-earth game, or if I'm playing just a general fantasy game, or if I'm playing in my own made-up world of Jural, these chaps feature heavily. I like them. And again, nice and simple. They've got the mask on, so they can't be recognised, presumably, which makes sense. Partly camouflage, although he's got bright pink bare arms. Well, they're not pink, are they? But you know what I mean. So maybe that's not quite going to work for him. But well, there he is, very simple again, easy peasy, nothing complicated about him. Nice bowman. So here we are getting into purpose-made figures for the Tolkien license of Lord of the Rings. These are Citadel Guard. You can tell they're Citadel Guard because they've got winged helmets. Now, before this, or even running alongside this, because these were the only ones, for commanders, we used to use Bill Lamming in Hull. He made a range of Vikings, but his Vikings, and he actually said it himself, for people who like Vikings with wings on their hats, even though it's not historically accurate. And so we used to get one. We'd have one of Bill Lamming's Vikings with horns on his hat, with wings on his hat, and he would be captain of the guard. So I haven't got one of them. I must keep my eye open. I'm sure one will pop up somewhere. Yeah, so they are Citadel Guard. See, when you say Citadel Guard nowadays, youngsters think you mean Games Workshop. I mean, the Citadel of Minas Tirith. Nice figures, weren't they? And we got excited by things like this because they were purpose, they were for us, new. Very nice too. Easy to paint again. Got a nice feel to them. Easy to get a result. You'll notice as well, on the metal, the armour, we're not inking, we're not shading, we're not trying to use gunmetal or anything fancy. They get silver. We undercoat and black, bob of silver. On their helmets, on the spear tips, on the chainmail. It's black with silver. So again, we're not trying to impress anybody. We want them painted quick, banged out on the table. Now this fella, looking all innocent, as if butter would not melt in his mouth, is the centre of a controversy in the 1970s. Because if I asked you to tell me who he is, I don't know what you'd say. You might say, well, he looks a little bit like those militia peasants. Where have they gone? Those fellas. He does. He's not one of them. He's not one of them. It says in the catalogue, a ranger. Now, I think rangers are Strider, Aragorn. But I do know gamers of this period who use them as the Faramir character to go with them. Now, I don't. I always think Faramir would dress... Well, all these men are wearing masks to hide themselves and get camouflaged, and he's walking around dressed like that. Does not make sense. But ho-hum. To me, when it says Ranger, I think they mean Strider, personally. But they don't say. So I don't know. Can't be proved right, can't be proved wrong. And other gamers can make him whoever they want. I've actually got a unit of these of about a dozen. And I either use them as officers for lots of units, or I use them as a unit of swordsmen in their own right. Because a figure is a figure, is a figure, is a figure. A cube is a cube, is a cube, is a cube, as they say. And now last, but by no means least in this segment, the wizard. Now, the wizard can be anybody, because there's only him. This one is Radagast. I did have a friend who's Saruman, same figure, but he painted him white and then he put sort of all the colours of the rainbow in sort of wormy squiggles all over him. It's quite hard to paint Saruman when he's flickering. It's all right when he's white, and Gandalf when he's grey. You very rarely find these figures today looking like that, because for some reason these wands, staffs, snap. They either snap above and disappear, or they snap below. Now, looking at the figure, it should really more logically snap above, because where his sleeve dangles down, the staff is actually moulded into the sleeve, so it wouldn't come off neatly. And because it's a solid mould, once they're done, you struggle to mend them. So you don't find many of the wizard characters with an end as well presented as he is. And again, I used to have Gandalf the Grey, and I used to have Radagast, and I used to have Gandalf the White, but I had to keep him for later in any campaign because he had to change from Gandalf the Grey to Gandalf the White. And the guy who was playing with the forces of evil had Sauron, who you didn't get Sauron. There was a mouth of Sauron, which was a bit like a skeleton on a horse. And then you get Angmar, and you get the Nazgul and Black Ride. Now Angmar with the Black Rides and whatever. But for the good guys, the command was a bit generic. My next plan is, unless you dramatically tell me to stop, I'm going to do the same type of presentation, but with the forces of darkness. Oh, you see, I could save that for Halloween, couldn't I? It's quite near Halloween now. Oh, I think you're going to have to let me know. Do you want it now? It's first week of October, or do you want to wait a fortnight and get it in my Halloween week of special wonders and horror? So let me know, fellas and fellesses. Thanks for being there. Love you. God bless. And as they say, up our way.